Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial child with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me.
Welcome back to the JP Reacts channel, my beautiful freedom-loving friend. This is where we like to call out the lies, hypocrisy, and corruption of tyrants and Satan, shine the light of awareness on woke absurdities, and highlight the amazing work of other freedom fighters, because truth conquers. What we got today, this is a riveting video. It is fiery, it is emotional, it to me is also a little bit enraging, but also I feel really good because there's a freedom fighter in this case standing up for truth against this absolute mind degenerative corruption that this judge has. So here's what we got. A Biden-nominated judge in a New York district, Sarah Netburn, she's on trial herself here in front of the Senate. Why? Because she took a 6'2" man, he, him, biological man, serial child sexual offender of the worst variety in a female prison. Now, what we're gonna see here in today's video is Ted Cruz absolutely going into her. She does not look good whatsoever. She looks very in alignment with her judgment. I wanna share something with you. Here's just a quick text from Bill Ackman on Twitter. This video has gone all over the place. What has happened to America? When did our judges lose all of their judgment? How is it that far left-wing ideologies have overtaken basic common sense and judgment? How did this happen? How did I not see this coming? Now, those are great questions. What I don't like about his statement, when did our judges lose all of their judgment? I don't think they have. I think there are some that have lost their judgment, and they're judging based on their political ideologies rather than the rule of law. So his statement, when did our judges lose all of their judgment? That's kind of like a blanket. All judges are bad and corrupt and susceptible to it. I don't agree with that. Judges I've seen in person have been awesome. So many great examples of it. And to me, this kind of statement, it's as off base as saying, dude, cops are bad. Let's defund the police. You know what? Maybe 2% of cops are bad. Maybe 2% of judges are bad and corrupt. 100% of my interactions with policemen, whether I know them personally or they're pulling me over for speeding because I deserve it, 99.9% of all cops are great. At least a very high percentage. And the bad ones are bad. Let's not pretend that that's not the case. And a corrupt judge, that is bad. But let's not pretend all judges are corrupt. Kind of like, let's defund the judicial system. Oh, there's problems with it. There's problems in law enforcement. But I just wanted to note that when we see a bad apple, just like you can see a bad apple cop, cool, let's call them out. Let's hold them accountable. Same thing with a judge, but I'm not gonna just mindlessly jump to the conclusion all judges are bad. So with that context in mind, my personal opinion, we're gonna take this from the top. Ted Cruz grilling Judge Sarah Netburn. She's a bad apple.
Well, Judge Netburn, I'm going to continue on this line of questioning. In your court, what matters more, the rights of individuals or your political ideology?
That's a great question. What matters more, the rights of individuals or your political ideology? Let's see what Judge Netburn has to say.
I apply the law to the facts.
I asked a question, which matters more?
Well, my political ideology doesn't matter at all.
Okay, so I don't believe you. And I think this case demonstrates that you are willing to subjugate the rights of individuals to satisfy your political ideology.
For the record, I don't believe her either.
This case involves a male defendant who raped a 9-year-old boy.
Ugh.
Was he guilty of that?
Yes, the petitioner pled guilty to that.
That's her political ideology talking. She didn't say he's guilty of that. The petitioner is guilty of that. And you'll see later on, she accidentally says he, because that's like the truthful way of talking about him. And then she quickly corrects herself. The petitioner. So that's her political ideology running her voice box right there, in my opinion.
Okay, so he raped a 9-year-old boy. He also raped a 17-year-old girl. Was he guilty of that?
He pled guilty. The petitioner pled guilty to that crime as well.
She just did the correction. You were right the first time, Sarah. He pled guilty to that.
So was he guilty?
I hope so, because she pled guilty to it.
Whoa, she. Yeah, what's more important, truth or your political ideology? Because you just did your political ideology. We'll get back to the firestorm of corruption in just a second, but first I want to tell you about the most potent thing I do to improve my sleep. Wearing Bond Charge Blue Block blocking glasses. Aside from simply going to bed, using the Bond Charge blue blocking glasses are the most potent thing I've done to improve the quality of my sleep and therefore give me better energy, mental focus, and less stress day after day. Because of course the blue light at night suppresses our sleep hormones, and that has consequences. I put these bad boys on usually about 7 p.m. and I find it makes a noticeable difference in me being able to go to sleep faster and get better, deeper sleep. My favorite pair is the amber lenses with the Maverick frames, because I think they make me look like a fighter pilot. It's pretty cool. Oh wait, there's more. I also find the only way I can nap when I need to nap is using the Bond Charge Blackout Sleep Mask, which you see modeled here. It's got a total darkness guarantee, and it's best in market in terms of form, fit, comfort, and darkness. Check out the Bond Charge blue light blocking glasses and blackout sleep mask. It's the absolute easiest thing you can do to maximally improve your sleep with honestly almost no extra effort. Just go to bondcharge.com/JPReacts to pick them up for yourself, and while you're there, use a discount code JPReacts for 15% off. Enjoy. Now, back to the firestorm.
He was a he when he did this.
That's correct.
And also criminal deviant conduct, which the record doesn't disclose what that was exactly. Then, after serving in prison, Mr. McClain was released for parole.
By the way, notice this guy back here with this towel. I suspect he has sweaty palms. I noticed the little things.
But then violated the terms of parole by having internet and was sent back to prison. 1 year after being released again, he was convicted of having child pornography. Is that correct?
I'm unclear on exactly the time frame that you're at, but the petitioner was convicted of distributing child pornography.
Child pornography that was images of adults violently raping children.
Abhorrent conduct.
Okay.
For which there are real victims.
And this individual, 6'2", biologically a man. A minute ago, you said that when this man decided that he was a she, you said this individual was, quote, I wrote it down, sober and entirely a female. That phrase struck me as remarkable. Did this individual have male genitalia?
I think what I said, or at least what
that is a verbatim quote, entirely a female.
Sorry, what I meant to say was hormonally a female.
Okay, but that's not entirely. Did this individual have male genitalia?
Yes.
So you took a 6'2" serial rapist, serial child rapist with male genitalia, and he said, you know, I'd like to be in a women's prison. And your answer was, that sounds great to me. Let me ask you something. The other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Is that a question you're asking me?
Yes, the other women in that prison, do they have any rights?
Of course.
Do they have the right not to have a 6'2" man who is a repeat serial rapist put in as their cellmate?
Senator Cruz, I considered the facts presented to me, and I reached a decision
I asked you a question.
On what the law
I asked
is.
you a question. Do they have a right not to have a 6'2" man who is a serial rapist put in as their cellmate? Do those women have a right to that?
Every person who's incarcerated has the right to be safe in their space.
But you didn't think so. You didn't think so. And in fact, I'm going to give some quotes from your order.
Before the quotes from her order, let's catch up on a quick thought here. This 6'2" man is obviously a criminal, a heinous criminal. And therefore, you'd understand he doesn't have good mental health, period. And we're not like trying to let's have compassion. No, I don't have compassion for this criminal. We know he doesn't have good mental health. We know he's a criminal of the worst sort. For this judge to then listen to him after he's been in prison, he says, hey, you know what now? I'm a woman. For this judge to just believe him, let alone that's also impossible. Let's live in a world where it is possible for a man to say, I'm a woman, and then voila, he's a woman. Let's pretend we can actually do that. Far from it. We're going to pretend you can, though. For her to just believe him is ludicrous. To believe a criminal of the worst variety would be incapable of lying. That is just absurd. And to Ted Cruz's original point, there is no possible motivation that judge could have other than her political ideologies of the gender variety. Let's go on with more evidence, Mr. Cruz. Continue.
Senator Kennedy is right. This is not a judge's order. This is a political activist. By the way, The beginning of your order says, at birth, people are typically assigned a gender.
No,
I'm going to
they're
say that
not.
would astonish a lot of Americans.
No, they observe gender. They don't assign anything at birth.
A lot of Americans think you go to the hospital, a baby is born, and congratulations, you have a little boy, a little girl. The assigned a gender, I know you went to Brown, but it sounds like it's in a college faculty lounge with no bearing on reality. The Bureau of Prison argued what I'm saying right now, that if you put this person in a female prison, there will be a risk of sexual assault to the women. And you know what you did? You said you didn't care about the women. I'm going to quote what you wrote. You wrote, quote, "The Bureau of Prisons claim penological interest in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. This interest is legitimate," that's kind of you to say, "but there are no signs that petitioner is at risk of reoffending. The record is devoid of evidence."
Serial rapists wouldn't have a risk of reoffending?
Incidents of violence or assault during petitioner's incarceration when she was the perpetrator, only the victim. A theoretical risk of sexual assault by the prisoner without more cannot support the BOP's position. No evidence, theoretical. Have you dealt in what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at a risk of reoffending?
Senator, as I do in every case.
Okay, I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law." I asked a question. In what?
He called her out. That's her legal strategy. Repeat, Senator, I follow the law. He just took that out from under her. He's being real. He's being bold. And I freaking appreciate it because right now he is standing for truth and what's right and protecting women and children. Let's hear that one more time.
Senator, as I do in every case.
Okay, I know you've been told to repeat the line, "I follow the law."
I love that.
I asked a question. In what universe is someone who is a serial repeat child rapist not at risk of reoffending?
Sir, I looked at the facts that were before me in this case. All of the evidence, including the statements of every warden who had supervised this petitioner.
You also wrote, "The BOP also posits that permitting petitioner to live among women will be traumatizing and possibly dangerous to them. This concern is overblown." I have to say, if I were the father of one of those women and you decided that my daughter's cellmate was going to be a 6'2" man who over and over and over again committed violent sexual assault, I would say the entire justice system is absurd, and it is clear on your record your political ideology matters a heck of a lot more than the rights of those women that you endangered. I think you're a radical, and I think you have no business being a judge.
Woo! Judge Netburn, there was an opportunity during your exchange with Senator Cruz that you were attempting to offer a response relative to
So I don't know who this is talking now, someone else on the Senate committee, but obviously another radical, like communist, like a radicalized Democrat who's now going to try to make this radical, corrupt judge look good. So let's hear it.
conditions under which this petitioner was unsafe in the facilities in which she was being held. I'd like to offer you the opportunity to finish that response.
So the facts that were presented to me and what I relied on to make my decision were that the petitioner had engaged in no violence, no physical violence, no acts of sexual violence whatsoever while in custody. All three wardens.
Let me stop you right there, Honorable Sarah Netburn. Cool. While he was in a male prison, he didn't commit acts of violence. Guess why? There would have been really serious consequences that this criminal didn't want to face. If you were acting out on children, or if this heinous criminal is in a women's prison, guess what? For him to act out violently, sexually, the consequences are far less. 6'2" guy. He might be the biggest, strongest woman in there. This judge knows everything I just said. What's most frustrating is seeing someone who knows the truth, they know what's right, but they just do their absolute best to act like they're too dumb to know what they know. This is a smart woman, but she's a corrupt woman.
Who supervised the petitioner requested that she be transferred to a women's facility because of her serious medical needs. In addition,
like what medical needs does a man have that require him to go to a women's prison? Like, I've dislocated my shoulder, I've blown out my knee. Never have I arrived at a hospital and been like, dude, we can't treat you here. We gotta send you to a women's prison for your medical needs. The Honorable corrupt judge is referring to medical needs as getting female hormone injections. First off, that's not a medical need. And second off, you don't need to go to a women's prison to do that. Third of all, this is a criminal. Like, tough shit. You don't get injected with the hormones you want. You kind of surrendered some of your rights when you became a absolute piece of trash human being, violating children repeatedly.
Bureau of Prisons' longtime medical provider testified at a 2-day hearing in my courtroom and recommended that the petitioner be transferred because of her serious medical needs.
Serious? Are they serious? Are you being serious?
And the last thing I'll say is that the Transgender Executive Council, which is the body...
I'm sure they're not biased. They wouldn't endorse putting a man in a women's prison because that man says he's a woman.
...that makes decisions on behalf of transgender transfer requests within the Bureau of Prisons never said that the petitioner could not be transferred, and never, ever said that she couldn't be transferred because of any risk of violence.
That's weird that the highest branch of law, the Transgender Council on Prisoners, would seemingly not see reality. Why would you even reference that?
Transgender Executive Council repeatedly said in denying the request was simply that she needed to maintain her hormone levels. That was the repeated justification for the denial of transfer. But the petitioner had reached full female hormone levels before even being incarcerated. At the time, the district judge in Indiana who sentenced the petitioner requested that she be placed in a women's facility. Her hormones were entirely female at that point, and so the decision by the Transgender Executive Council to deny the transfer request based on this idea that it was only because her hormones needed to be consistent and stabilized, I found was a pretext, but they never once said she cannot be transferred because of violence. It was always based on this idea that her hormones had to be...
Thank you, Judge.
It's like weird when we test his hormones, we don't find any violence in the hormonal levels. Cool. That's because violence is a behavior. It's nothing to do with hormones.
Judge Netburn, Senator
Judge
Padilla,
Netburn, that's
Senator
directly
Padilla,
contrary to what your
Senator, you
report
all
says.
have
That is
had
directly
It's going to be bickering for a second.
No.
No. We're going to follow up.
We're going to
You're going to follow up, and that's how it works.
There is not.
That is exactly how it works.
Look,
If you follow up, you didn't get extra time, and she just directly contradicted her own report. I'm just going to read her own words because it's exactly the opposite of what she said. Your own report.
Senators,
said,
I gave both of you
She's definitely trying to protect this corrupt judge.
time to finish your line of questioning.
I
I allowed the witness to finish her. I allowed the witness to finish her response. I allowed the witness to finish her response. That is,
I understand that you're scared of the facts.
I have
Senator
Padilla.
Madam Chair,
Open up testimony and then
she
not
has an
give us a
obligation to
chance
explain
cross-examine?
why she directly contradicted what she wrote in her report. She says in her report, the Bureau of Prisons' claimed penological interest is in protecting female prisoners from sexual violence and trauma. She just told you the Bureau of Prisons didn't say there was a concern about sexual violence and trauma. Those are directly contradictory, and why are you contradicting what you wrote in your report?
And what are you Madam trying to Chair, hide, I believe Madam I have Chair? the floor. No, wait, point of I order. believe
Senator
I have
Padilla.
the floor.
Senator
What are you trying to
Padilla.
hide,
Are you going to let her
Madam
answer that question?
Senator
or you
Padilla.
don't want her to answer that question?
Senator
You're
Padilla.
afraid?
She doesn't want her to answer the question. And that's where it ends. I found this absolutely fascinating. The part of it that I really like is you see politicians who are actually standing up for what's right, going after this radicalized judge, which, by the way, our court system, again, I think most judges are great the same way I think most cops are great. But even one bad apple in the judicial system is just a cancer in our democracy. This woman judge who is corrupt beyond belief, in my opinion, based on what I've seen here, she is a cancer to our judicial system. That's my opinion. I love to see people passionately representing truth because we have to do it, and at times it's got to be passionate. And then people who are trying to defend their lies typically just come across looking like what they are, corrupt liars. That's how Judge Netburn came across, and the other politicians that were trying to protect her and prevent her from answering more questions. I'm going to look forward to seeing how this plays out. Thank you for watching this with me, my beautiful freedom-loving friend. I'll look forward to seeing you on our next video. And until then, stay free of corruption.